Well, hey, everybody, Pastor Steve here, and I'm so glad you've joined me for today's devotion. We are wrapping up our reading of the book of First Corinthians. We're in chapter 16. Tomorrow we'll start in Second Corinthians chapter 1. Now, in 16, he talks about an offering. Paul had been collecting from the churches in Galatia and other places a relief offering, if you will, for the believers back in Jerusalem who were going through some tough times and some famine and stuff. And I think he was also trying to strengthen the relationships, the bond between the believers in Jesus in Jerusalem who were Jewish background and the Gentile churches in Galatia and Greece and other places. But anyway, he gives them instructions for how to collect that offering. He also, in the second part of the chapter, makes some personal comments about his personal plans, his travel plans, and also the plans for some of his other associates. And I want us to look at that for just a moment, starting at verse 5. He says to the Corinthians, he says, but I will come to you after I go through Macedonia, for I am going through Macedonia, and perhaps I will stay with you or even spend the winter so that you may send me on my way whenever I may go. Now, Paul is writing this during his third missionary journey while he is in the city of Ephesus, located on the western tip of modern Turkey. At that time, that would be Asia Minor. And he spends 2 years in Ephesus. On his previous missionary journey, his second missionary journey, he had passed through Galatia, again, going over to Macedonia, Philippi, Berea, some of those places, and spent 18 months in the city of Corinth, about 50 miles west of Athens, and started a church there. And then, of course, after those 2 years, that 18 months in Corinth, he returns to his home church in Antioch over in Syria, and then goes on his third missionary journey. Now, third one, his base is in Ephesus for 2 years. Writes this letter to the Corinthians. We know from the book of Acts, after those 2 years in Corinth or in Ephesus, Paul went west and north and revisited the churches in Macedonia. He talks about that here in chapter 16, Philippi, the Philippians and others, and then down to Athens and Corinth in Greece. And we know from Acts, when he got there, he spent about 3 months with those believers. This is at the end of his third missionary journey, about 3 months with those believers in Corinth. And so he's saying, I want to come to you. Acts tells us he did come to them, and then they sent him on his way, and he went back to Jerusalem where he was arrested. Now, so let's pick it back up in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 5. He says, I want to go through Macedonia, and then I want to spend some time with you. Verse 7, for I do not wish to see you now just in passing, for I hope to remain with you some time if the Lord permits. But I will remain in Ephesus until Pentecost. So he says, when I come to you, I don't want just to, be there for, a few days like when he went to Philippi and other places as he revisited. He said, I want to stay with you a little while. And he did that. He stayed there, 3 months? So he did that. So that's kind of the chronology of what is going on here. Now, my devotional thought is verse 9. So he's writing to these believers over in Corinth while he's in Ephesus. And Ephesus was a very important city. The ruins of Ephesus have not been totally excavated, but they have been largely excavated, and you can visit it very easily, very safe. I encourage you to do that sometime. Beautiful, beautiful sight to see. He said, for a wide door for effective service, effective ministry has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. Wide door. Paul is in Ephesus. A lot of highways passed through or ran to Ephesus. And he was there 2 years. As best we can tell, that's longer than he stayed any other place on his missionary travels. Started a significant church. Acts tells us that while he was there, all of Asia heard the gospel. In other words, his missionary team was able to span out, go other places while Paul was in Ephesus. So, for instance, when you read the opening chapters of Revelation written by John, the apostle, John, the disciple of Jesus, 7 churches of Revelation. Ephesus is one of them. Laodicea, Pergamon, Smyrna, and there are others, Colossae, um, all within easy travel distance from Ephesus. And it's probably during this time here that Paul's team started some of those churches. And so there's this great door open to us to reach people for Jesus in Ephesus and in the surrounding region. But there are many adversaries. Just because God is blessing does not mean you face no opposition. Just because God is using you does not mean there are not people who try to hinder you. There will always be adversaries. And I am convinced that the more you do for the Lord and the more God blesses, sometimes the more the devil tries to stop you. That's why we need to be prayed up, stay connected to Jesus, maintain your integrity, because one of the ways he gets us is through flaws in our character. And I want to say to those of you who are really, 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 really busy, hear me, hear my heart. When you are the absolute busiest, it's when you need to make the biggest commitment to praying, reading the Word, and having times of quiet with Jesus. When you are the busiest, it's when you are your most vulnerable. When you are the busiest, you will end up being weak and tired and susceptible to the attacks of the evil one. When God is blessing with open doors and great opportunities, you must make it a priority to spend time with Jesus and stop using your busyness as a reason, as a justification, as an explanation, as an excuse for why you can't, because you're putting yourself at risk, my brothers, my sisters. Some years ago, a book came out, Too Busy Not to Pray. Too busy not to pray. My prayer for us, First Baptist Rock Hill, is verse 9. God, open a door for us for effective service, effective ministry, effective evangelism. Will you join me in praying that for our church? God bless you. I'll see you.